I'd like to invite Dr. Jiyoung, who will present the chapters on the government civil society relationship, the Korean International Development Corporation, historical perspective. Dr. Jiyoung is a senior research fellow at the Research Institute of North Korea and Northeast Asia Development of Korea Eximbank. So Dr. Hong, please 10 or 12 minutes.
I'm Jiyoung Hong. It's very nice to meet you all. Of course, it would be much better if we could meet face to face, but still I'm very happy to be here. I will share my presentation here. I would like to say that it was a great opportunity for me to study with excellent Japanese and Korean scholars together. And I'm also honored to have an opportunity to present at a book launch seminar today. In this book, I dealt with Korean development civil society mainly, what they have done and how the role of civil society had changed, and the relationship between government and civil society. Civil society is one of the most interesting issues for me, myself personally, but it is also important because they have exerted a great influence on Korea's development cooperation, in particular, policymaking. And it would be very interesting to compare the difference between Japanese civil society and Korean civil society with Professor Takayanagi's presentation coming up later on the second session, I think. Okay, today's presentation will proceed in this order. First, I will introduce the questions and framework for analysis, and the main contents of the chapter will be broadly divided into two parts: the role has changed of the civil society and the relationship between the government and civil society. And lastly, finding and conclusion will be explained. So the research started with these questions. What role has the Korean development civil society played so far? Has the role of civil society changed, and how? And what was the relationship between the government and civil society? And are these changes in activities and roles common among the development civil society for all? And the relationship is closely linked to the role of CSOs. It is necessary to closely examine how the development of civil society came to play in its current status and role. To this end, this study applies Najam's forces model, which presents a conceptual framework for the government and civil society relationship. Najam's model defines government and civil society relationship according to whether or not they share the same goals and means. When the goals and means are shared, it is defined as a cooperation relationship. You can see on here. And when only the goals are shared, the complementarity relationship is established. And when the goals are different, but the same strategy is taken, it is called co-optation relations. And lastly, if they don't share anything, goals and different strategies, different goals and different stages, of course, then they have a confrontation relationship. First, in the first part, I will briefly show how the civil society has grown and what was the role of them in each period. I divided the period into three parts from 1995 to 2009, and second period from 2010 to 2017, and the last period will be the after 2017. In the first period, you can see the rapid growth in numbers and size of it, NGOs. It is the number of newly established and registered development NGOs. So it can be seen the accumulated number of NGO have increased rapidly especially in early 2000 to 2010. In particular, 2010 is a year worth paying attention to development cooperation in Korea. In 2010, civil society, around that time, there were two important civil society coalitions were established for the purpose of advocacy activities, as you see on screen, GCAP and COFID. GCAP dealt with the MDGs, and they hold a civil GTNE dialogues in 2010. And COFID dealt with the aid effectiveness issues, and they hold a Busan Civil Society Forum in 2011, which was parallel civil society forum for the HLF4 OECD conference. With these two coalitions that I have shown to you before, civil society expanded beyond its former limited role as an implementator to take on the role as an advocate by reinforcing the political advocacy function that criticizes and monitors the government at the stage of international development policy and project implementation as well. This chart shows key events in development cooperation at national and global level and the civil society responsibilities. So there are the main events at a global level here, from MDGs to G20 Summit, HF4, and the national level major events for development cooperation in Korea. And these are the activities that civil society responds for each major event. As you see, there were a number of important events, and Korean civil society actively participated and responds to every opportunity they face, both at domestic level and global level with some international NGOs network. However, GCAP and COFID has inherent limitation in that they have been built up around major international conferences or global events. Both major civil society advocacy allies were formed to respond to UN or OECD agendas supported by a global network, and this has been the background for weakening the sustainability of each alliance since the process was terminated. The advocacy capabilities and experiences, however, were not transferred to the policy function of the NGOs Council once GCAP and COFID weakened after mid-2010s. And based on these backgrounds, this paper, as I said, subdivides the period into three parts. So the first period, the relationship defined as a relationship between civil society and government, defines as a complementarity and confrontation at the same time. Because government and civil society cooperation was limited to the area of service implementation, and government focused only on the financial support for civil society. On the other hand, civil society participation in the decision-making process was very limited because there was no institutional channel for civil society to express opinions on the development cooperation agenda on a policy level. In the second period, then, the nature of the relationship of mixture of the complementary and confrontation remains the same. But in the meantime, a point of sharing the same goals and means has emerged, as both fundamentally agree with the global norms such as SDGs and development effectiveness, and which aimed at alleviating poverty and inequalities. And during that period, through major international conferences and global events, civil society has secured an official and unofficial channels to present their voices to the government and public as well. So we can see all these CSO networks, major advocacy activities in this chart from slide 10 to next 11 here. And after the third period, after 2017, around the institutionalization of CSO cooperation began to respond to the continued demands of civil society. Experts and representatives of civil society became members of CIDC, the top policy level of decision-making in development cooperation under Prime Minister, and its working committee as well at the Office of Government Policy Cooperation. In 2019, with the establishment of a policy framework for government civil society partnership in international development cooperation, the government has established an institutional framework and foundation for participation in the development civil society in terms of policy. So to summarize the discussion that I provide here, the observing the growth path, it can be found that a series of key international conferences held in Korea served as an important momentum for development CSOs to grow into watchdogs and partners in the policymaking process. In other words, they have fully utilized major international conferences held in Korea as political opportunities and spaces. So the role has changed from service delivery implementators to watchdog, and finally they became a policy partner as their role has been changed. However, this experience has brought a significant change to the role of CSO, which has traditionally been recognized as a service delivery implementator with a focus on project implementation in the development sector. However, this is mainly the achievement of a small number of large CSOs along with exceptional scholars and experts. Therefore, the development civil society has now accumulated the common experience of changing the political and social environment on its own. With this context, the issue of accountability and of its own representativeness still remain, as scholars, experts, and civil society representatives participating in the official channels have not secured or been given representation to collect opinions from the entire development civil society. Additionally, the overall level of participation in civil society is still low because institutionalized civil society participation in actual policymaking process is quite limited. So I add the limitation of the practical problems, but the key feature was that the role of the civil society has been changed a lot, and according to the change, the government and civil society relationship has also changed. And that is what I have discussed in the chapter 10. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, thank you very much, Dr. Hong. I'd like to give you information that this seminar is in fact the second book launch seminar. The first one was held in November at the Japanese Society's annual conference. So today we only present part of the book, not whole chapters. So you need to know that we are not today presenting all chapters. To see all chapters, you need to go back to the book, so that the book chapters are available in the website, and probably you can also ask your library to purchase the book to read. So that's the information. And now I'd like to invite Professor